sometimes toys fall on the floor. Okay, a lot of times toys fall on the floor, and it's because of this reason that Al Gore invented the action figure stand. And action figure stands, well, they tend to come in lots of shapes and colors: clear, gray, black, rainbow, but usually they're a flat disc with a little stub that gets inserted into the hole at the bottom of an action figure's foot to keep that figure from falling over like a bunch of dominoes. Now, as the years have progressed, what were just basic stands have absolutely evolved. 12-inch figures for a long time have had what are referred to as doll stands, which are usually adjustable, and they clip around the figure's waist as opposed to pegs in the bottom of their feet. We see this a lot with things ranging from Barbie to Sideshow. And again, as more and more adult collectors come into the hobby, we're seeing more and more stand manufacturers create all sorts of ways of displaying figures. And what's interesting is more and more of these showcase figures in what I would call a battle stance, or to quote Alphabet, to defy gravity. In other words, we're no longer just putting figures on stands and looking at them on a shelf, but there has been this evolution in action figure collecting where we want to display our figures as if they're coming right out of an action scene from a movie or a comic book or a poem. And, well, it kind of begs an analyzation of figures versus content. For the most part, for the history of action figures, pretty much kind of until the late 90s, figures were what were called waiting for the bus. This is a kind of a toy industry term, but it's basically when you have figures that are just standing straight, looking ahead. It's if they're in a line. There's no action. There's even the arms and legs are flat against their sides. Well, gravity doesn't exactly always work this way, and it's interesting with non-moving items, static things like action figures with articulation. More and more, we want to pose them without gravity, if you will, to defy that. And the question of why we do this is really about capturing characters in a moment in time. So sort of like nature photography, right? Or pausing a movie, if you will. And really, I think that this desire for action figure collectors to display figures like this comes from the connection to comic books and movies and how they've evolved. But we also got to the point that things that shouldn't defy gravity are sculpted this way, like headbands, right? I mean, a headband shouldn't be floating out in space like that. Or a cape, shouldn't get propped up naturally. Obviously, it takes the characters, either their superpowers or physically their movement in time and space to cause things to sort of flutter in the wind, like a ponytail, as an example. So the Super Patriot figure has a articulated ponytail, and you can pose it so it looks like it's kind of flapping in the wind. Awesome, right? Okay, actually, this is a completely different Super Patriot. That's not important. The point is, lots of movies are inspiring figures that are pre-posed or are posed in the middle of action. The Matrix line from the first movie is a perfect example from this. And I think this actually kind of kick-started this movement because this was one of the first action figure lines that had almost non-articulated figures pre-posed in a dynamic shot from the movie. So you could literally recreate movie moments with figures. And this was literally the opposite of waiting for the bus. These figures are pre-posed. So how does this relate to content? Well, if you look at comic books, movies, and other forms of visual poetry, not static poetry, you can see that throughout the history of, let's just look at, comic books, well, characters have become much more action-focused. Back in the golden age, yeah, there was punching and kicking, but for the most part, comic books were drawn in square grids and the action was kind of kept to a couple shots. Nowadays, in modern comics, you have blast effects and Spider-Man with his legs all over the place and, all sorts of jumping and flying and smashing. Well, just as comic books have evolved, so have action figures. And having characters that just have arms and legs flat against their bodies and, again, standing or the bus pose just doesn't fly anymore. And as content has evolved, so have toys. While we used to be satisfied with simply taking our figures out in nature and having a good time, well, now most adults display their figures, and we like to do so in the most dramatic way possible. We even like to sometimes recreate battles, having characters flying, blasting out effects, moving through portals. It's about having control over a character, and now that characters in content are so much more bigger, larger than life, well, now we're getting characters with sculpted anti-gravity headbands. It's all part of tying toys into their source material and how much more MTV material has gotten. I hope this video was a little insightful into ways we display and collect. If you like this video, please do share it with others. It's the best way to support this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.